We're counting down the 20 forgotten poor man dinners that trump today's most popular dishes. From skillet suppers crafted in a rush to hearty casseroles that stretched scraps through a week. These meals sustained generations through war, economic crashes, and everyday hardship. Each dish on this list isn't just a recipe. It's a lesson in resourcefulness, family pride, and the ingenuity that turned humble ingredients into lasting memories. Expect to discover everything from pantry staple marvels to regionally cherished one-pots, all born from necessity yet brimming with dignity. Which lost classic stands as the ultimate survivor meal? Let's begin our journey with a dish that filled mess halls and kitchen tables alike. Number 1 on our list. Chipped beef on toast, known by GIs as SOS, became a defining meal of World War II mess halls. Army cooks relied on jars of salty, shelf-stable dried beef, rinsed to cut the brine, then torn into strips and tossed into sizzling butter. Flour went in next, creating a thick base before milk was slowly added, transforming the mixture into a creamy sauce that stretched a small amount of meat to feed dozens. The 1-to-1 fat-to-flour ratio was a mess hall secret, as was the heavy hand with black pepper. Toast, often made from yesterday's bread, soaked up every drop of the savory gravy. The aroma of simmering milk and frying bread filled barracks and home kitchens, offering comfort and a sense of camaraderie. For many veterans, SOS became a symbol of both hardship and resourcefulness. A dish that proved preserved meat and a little ingenuity could sustain body and spirit. Wartime pantry ads promoted jarred beef as a thrifty staple, and oral histories recall the dish as a morale booster, even when rations were tight. Today's versions may use artisan bread, but the original's thrift and salty bite remain a benchmark for stretching protein in tough times. Friday nights in mid-century Catholic homes often meant the unmistakable scent of tuna noodle casserole drifting from the kitchen. This dish was more than a meal. It was a solution, born from the need to keep Fridays meatless while still filling everyone up. Parish cookbooks from the 1950s and 1960s overflowed with versions of this casserole, each relying on a single 5-ounce can of tuna, a can of condensed cream of mushroom soup, and a handful of egg noodles. The soup, first introduced by Campbell's in 1934, became the essential binder, turning pantry staples into a creamy, comforting bake. Milk stretched the mixture, while a layer of crushed potato chips or breadcrumbs on top added crunch and a hint of indulgence. As it baked, the edges crisped and the aroma promised a satisfying dinner, even when budgets were tight. Children looked forward to the golden corners, and mothers took pride in making something hearty out of simple canned goods. Tuna noodle casserole became a symbol of resourcefulness, a way to honor religious tradition and embrace the convenience of modern foods, bridging faith and practicality in the heart of the American kitchen. Beans and cornbread formed the backbone of countless Southern and Appalachian tables, especially when money was tight and winters long. Store ledgers from the mid-20th century reveal families relying on sacks of dried beans and cornmeal, bought on credit and stretched into weeks of meals. The process began with beans, navy or pinto, soaked overnight, then simmered for hours with a ham hock or salt pork, filling the kitchen with a smoky, savory aroma that signaled comfort. Cornbread, mixed with yellow cornmeal and baked in a cast-iron skillet, slicked with bacon grease, emerged golden and crisp-edged, its crumb tender inside. The true heart of this meal was the pot liquor, the mineral-rich broth left after the beans were gone, never wasted but ladled over cornbread or sipped straight for strength. Oral histories recall children learning to savor every drop, elders teaching that nothing nourishing should be thrown away. At church suppers and union gatherings, beans and cornbread became a symbol of thrift, dignity, and community, a meal that honored both resourcefulness and shared hardship. Modern shortcuts can't capture the depth of flavor or the sense of pride that came from a pot tended all day and shared among neighbors. In factory towns of the 1950s and 60s, the fried bologna sandwich was born out of necessity and skillet magic. Thick slices of bologna, sometimes cut from a hefty pink chub, sometimes peeled from a deli stack, hit a hot, dry pan and began to curl, edges lifting into crispy cups as the fat sizzled out. The sound was unmistakable, a sharp crackle, a pop, the kind of kitchen music that signaled something good was coming. No oil needed, just a fork to press the center flat so every bit browned evenly. The aroma, salty, meaty, with a hint of sweetness, filled school cafeterias and small kitchens alike. Once golden and blistered, the bologna landed on soft white bread, often with a swipe of yellow mustard for tang, sometimes a slice of American cheese melting into the warm meat. This sandwich was more than thrift. It was a lesson in turning the cheapest protein into a crispy, craveable treat. In an era when deli meats are lean and rarely see a skillet, few sandwiches deliver the same smoky crunch or the pride that came from coaxing flavor from humble beginnings. The fried bologna sandwich remains a testament to resourceful cooking. In the kitchens of factory towns, macaroni and tomatoes became a staple that signaled both thrift and comfort. The sharp scent of stewed tomatoes simmering with elbow macaroni filled the air, a reminder that a 15-ounce can could stretch far when paired with a box of pasta. Boiled macaroni met bright, acidic tomatoes, sometimes diced, sometimes crushed, blending into a sauce that was both tangy and satisfying. A pinch of sugar often softened the acidity, while a spoonful of bacon grease or leftover lard added a savory depth, coating each noodle in a silky sheen. When money was tight, cooks would thin the tomatoes with water or toss in cubes of stale bread, making the pot heartier without spending extra. The sound of pasta hitting the bubbling tomato base and the sight of the sauce thickening as it cooked became familiar rituals. Children grew up savoring the sweet-tart balance, learning how a simple meal could feel generous. Unlike richer pasta dishes, macaroni and tomatoes relied on resourcefulness, not abundance. Its aroma, sharp, slightly sweet, unmistakably tomato, lingered long after supper, a testament to how Depression-era ingenuity turned humble ingredients into a meal that filled both stomach and memory. Salmon patties with peas turned a humble can into a seafood supper, long before fresh fish was easy to find inland. A 7-ounce can of pink salmon, bones, skin, and all, became the backbone of this dish, especially in towns far from the coast. The fish was flaked and mixed with breadcrumbs, a beaten egg, and black pepper, sometimes stretched with leftover potatoes or cracker crumbs if money was tight. The real draw came from the skillet. Each patty, shaped by hand, hit hot oil or bacon drippings with a sharp sizzle, forming a golden crust that locked in the briny, savory interior. The scent of browning fish and toasting crumbs filled kitchens, promising a rare treat. Sweet canned peas, soft and bright green, were always served alongside, their mildness balancing the salty richness of the patties. This meal proved that even shelf-stable seafood could become something special with a little skill and a hot pan. In both coastal and inland homes, children remember the crunch of that crust and the pride in serving a taste of the sea, no matter how far from salt water they lived. Few pantry meals delivered such comfort or thrift. Hot dogs and baked beans turned ordinary gatherings into something festive, especially when budgets were tight. After World War II, this sweet and savory pairing became a fixture at church suppers, firehouse fundraisers, and backyard picnics. Grocery ads from the 1950s featured navy beans and hot dogs as weekly specials, promising a meal that could stretch for a crowd. Dried navy beans soaked overnight, then simmered with salt pork, onions, and a generous pour of molasses or brown sugar, created a glossy caramelized sauce that clung to every bite. The beans swelled until creamy, soaking up the smoky sweet flavors, while hot dogs, added near the end, plumped in the sticky glaze until their skins snapped. Some cooks added ketchup or dry mustard for extra tang, but the heart of the dish was always the slow-cooked beans and the unmistakable aroma that filled kitchens and drifted out to porches. At community events, this dish meant full plates and laughter, with kids lining up for seconds and adults lingering over stories. The beans made sure no one left hungry, and the hot dogs brought a sense of celebration, all for just a few dimes. Even today, the memory of those molasses-glazed beans lingers. Grilled cheese and tomato soup offered comfort from the simplest pantry staples. In the decades after World War II, this meal became a fixture in American homes and school cafeterias, where white bread and processed cheese slices were chosen for affordability and reliability. Margarine, often used during butter shortages, was spread to every edge, creating a crisp, golden crust as the sandwich sizzled in the pan. Inside, the cheese melted into a soft, gooey layer that clung to the bread's crumb. Meanwhile, a can of condensed tomato soup simmered on the stove, sometimes thinned with milk for extra richness. A pinch of sugar balanced the tomato's acidity, a small but crucial trick passed down through generations. The ritual was always the same: dunking a wedge of hot, crunchy sandwich into the steaming soup, watching the crust soak up the red broth until each bite turned tender and warm. This pairing was more than a meal. It was a promise of solace on sick days, a quick supper after long hours, and a way to make something nourishing when the fridge was nearly empty. Its enduring appeal lies in the contrast: crisp bread, oozy cheese, sweet tangy soup, and the memory of simple, shared comfort. Shepherd's pie made the most of leftovers, turning scraps of roast and vegetables into a meal that felt generous. In mill towns and immigrant kitchens, cooks would start by browning onions and carrots in a skillet, then add chopped beef or lamb from Sunday's roast. A quick gravy came together from pan drippings and a dusting of flour, thickened with broth or water. Frozen peas or corn, if available, brought color and a hint of sweetness to the mix. The filling was spooned into a battered baking dish and covered with a thick layer of mashed potatoes, always fork scored on top to encourage browning and crispness, a trick found in old immigrant cookbooks. Melted butter brushed over the peaks helped the mashed potato lid puff and turn golden in the oven, while the gravy bubbled up around the edges. Each forkful brought together soft potato, savory gravy, and the rare treat of tender meat, all in one bite. This dish taught a lesson in layering and thrift, coaxing comfort from what was left on hand. Even as modern versions add cheese or extra meat, the original's pride came from making do and making every layer count. Spanish rice with beef-filled kitchens, with the scent of toasted grain and simmering tomato, a dish born from necessity and shaped by Mexican-American tradition. The process began with plain white rice, poured into hot oil and stirred until every grain took on a russet hue and a nutty aroma. This toasting step, rooted in Hispanic cookbooks, transformed the texture and flavor, setting the stage for what followed. Chopped onions and bell peppers joined the rice, followed by a can of stewed tomatoes, their juices hissing as they hit the pan. Only half a pound of ground beef was needed, its aroma mingling with the vegetables, promising richness even in small amounts. Sometimes corn or peas were added for color and sweetness, but the heart of the dish was always the rice, swelling as it absorbed the tangy tomato broth and turning a deep, sun-baked red. Covered and left to steam, the grains became tender but never mushy, thanks to that careful toasting. Spanish rice with beef was more than a way to stretch meat. It celebrated resourcefulness and cultural memory, tying back to the tomato fields and grain diversity that shaped so many American tables. Hamburger gravy over potatoes became a staple in American kitchens during times when every grocery dollar counted. The dish starts with a single pound of ground beef, browned in a skillet until the fond forms, a layer of caramelized bits that signals flavor waiting to be unlocked. Flour is scattered over the meat, soaking up the fat and turning it into a thickening agent. Evaporated milk or water follows, whisked in to create a creamy, pepper-flecked gravy that stretches the meat far beyond what a pound alone could provide. Poured over a mound of mashed or boiled potatoes, the sauce transforms humble ingredients into a meal that feels generous, even when meat prices soar. During the 1973 meat boycott, union newsletters and local reports documented families turning to hamburger gravy as a protest against price spikes, reviving a Depression-era strategy for making do. The method, deglazing the pan, coaxing every bit of flavor from browned beef and onions, foreshadows later skillet hash traditions. Unlike dishes built around organ meats, hamburger gravy relied on stretching familiar beef, not substituting it. The result is a dish rooted in economic protest and creativity, where resourcefulness and technique mattered more than abundance, and comfort was measured by how far a pound could go. Pancakes for dinner became a familiar answer to empty cupboards and long days, especially during the Depression. When meat was out of reach, families leaned on the speed and comfort of a simple batter meal. The secret, recorded in battered recipe notebooks, was soured milk, either left out to turn or made with a splash of vinegar. This trick gave pancakes their signature tang and tenderness, even when buttermilk was a luxury. Flour, always precious, was stretched with baking powder and a little sugar, whisked into a thin batter that poured easily onto a hot griddle. The sizzle of batter hitting bacon grease or margarine filled kitchens with a warm, yeasty aroma, a signal that supper was close. Sometimes, if luck allowed, a handful of ham scraps or berries made it into the mix. But most nights, pancakes were eaten plain or with a drizzle of homemade syrup. Stacked high and served hot, they brought families together around the table, turning scant ingredients into a meal that felt both resourceful and celebratory. Pancakes for dinner weren't about indulgence. They were about making flour work overtime, transforming a few basics into a supper that offered comfort, pride, and a little relief. Liver and onions brought thrift and nutrition together in kitchens where nothing was wasted. After the war, beef liver became a staple for families watching every penny, its deep red slices promising a dense supply of iron and vitamins. Nutrition pamphlets of the 1950s called it a powerhouse for building strong bodies, especially for children and laborers. Preparation was simple but precise: thin slices of liver, dredged in flour to soften any bitterness. Hit a skillet shimmering with bacon grease or lard. Onions, sliced and sharp, joined the pan, their pungency mellowing as they turned golden and sweet. The liver cooked fast, just enough to stay tender, the flour forming a crisp edge that sealed in juices. A dash of salt and pepper, sometimes a splash of vinegar, finished the dish. This meal wasn't just about stretching a dollar, it was about honoring the whole animal, turning a cut many overlooked into something sustaining. Parents understood that a single serving could deliver nearly a week's worth of iron, a fact that made up for any initial reluctance at the table. Liver and onions demanded attention and skill, rewarding cooks with nourishment and pride. Potato soup with saltines became a staple when winter pressed hard and pantries ran low. Across the Midwest and Appalachia, families leaned on potatoes, cheap, filling, and always available. Chopped potatoes and onions simmered in water or thin broth, their scent filling the kitchen. A spoonful of bacon grease, saved from breakfasts past, melted in first, adding smoky depth to the pot. When milk was scarce, cooks reached for saltines. Crumbled into the bubbling soup, these crackers thickened the broth and created a creamy texture without a drop of cream. Some added a splash of evaporated milk if they had it, but the real magic came from the way the crackers dissolved, turning the soup silky and dense. Children broke extra saltines over their bowls, watching them soak up the warmth. The soup was simple, but every bowl was a lesson in making do, stretching scraps into something that soothed and satisfied. Unlike modern versions loaded with cheese or cream, this soup relied on thrift and a knack for coaxing comfort from the humblest ingredients. Oral histories recall how a handful of saltines could transform a pot of potatoes into a meal that filled bellies and brought families together. Egg salad sandwiches became a fixture in post-war American lunch culture, offering a cheap, filling solution for families on the go. Hard-boiled eggs, chopped and mixed with mayonnaise, and a spoonful of yellow mustard formed the base, simple, reliable, and easy to prepare in big batches. PTA cookbooks from the 1950s and 60s featured endless variations, but the essentials rarely changed. Eggs, mayo, a bit of mustard, and if the pantry allowed, some chopped celery or onion for crunch. Salt and pepper brought the flavors together, sometimes with a hint of paprika for color. The creamy mixture was spread thick on soft white bread, wrapped in wax paper, and tucked into lunch boxes, ready to be eaten cold. For many, the memory of biting into a cool, tangy sandwich at noon lingers. The bread softened just enough to feel comforting. Egg salad sandwiches were designed for efficiency, made ahead, meant to last, and able to feed a crowd without much fuss or expense. In a world before pre-packaged lunches, this was thrift at its most practical, turning a dozen eggs into a week's worth of satisfying meals. The honest flavor and quiet economy still resonate. Corned beef hash with eggs turned kitchen scraps into a skillet meal that defined urban diner culture. After World War II, canned corned beef became a staple in city kitchens, but the real magic happened when home cooks paired it with leftover brisket, potatoes, and onions. Potatoes were parboiled, then tossed into a hot skillet, slicked with bacon grease, their edges crisping as they sizzled. Diced onions followed, caramelizing and adding sweetness. Chopped corned beef, canned or leftover, was scattered over the top, then the whole mixture pressed flat and left undisturbed, letting a golden crust form underneath. Patience was the secret, coaxing out those crispy bits that diners craved. Shallow wells were made with the back of a spoon, and eggs cracked into each pocket. The pan covered just long enough for the whites to set, while the yolks stayed soft. The aroma, salty, smoky, and savory, filled cramped apartments and echoed in all-night diners from Boston to Chicago. Each plate was a mosaic of crunchy hash and creamy yolk, proof that thrift and technique could transform scraps into something memorable. Even today, few breakfasts rival the satisfaction of a skillet hash done right. Chicken a la king on toast offered a sense of occasion from the most ordinary leftovers. In the 1950s, when fresh cream and poultry were reserved for special days, home cooks turned to pantry staples to create something that felt extravagant. Leftover chicken, even just a handful, became the centerpiece. Butter, onions, and celery formed the aromatic base. But it was cornstarch, preferred over flour in many mid-century kitchens, that gave the sauce its signature gloss and silkiness. Evaporated milk, always on hand, brought richness without the need for fresh cream. Pimientos, vivid and jarred, added a splash of color, while mushrooms and peas contributed texture and a nod to restaurant-style presentation. Toasted white bread, crisp at the edges, was the canvas that soaked up every drop of the creamy sauce. Families gathered on Sunday evenings, savoring the illusion of luxury as the sauce pooled over toast, the colors bright against the plate. Chicken a la king transformed scraps into a celebration, a dish that lingered in memory for its creaminess and comfort. Modern versions may skip the careful thickening or the pimiento garnish, but the original remains a testament to resourcefulness and the quiet luxury of making do. Haluski, the humble pairing of cabbage and noodles, tells the story of Eastern European families who settled in Pennsylvania's coal towns. In those kitchens, thrift wasn't just a virtue, it was survival. Storage cabbages, kept cool through winter, became the backbone of suppers that stretched to feed everyone at the table. Sliced onions hit bacon grease in a battered skillet, their sharpness mellowing into sweetness as the scent of caramelized fat filled the room. Shredded cabbage followed, frying down until its color deepened and it soaked up every drop of flavor. Egg noodles, sometimes rolled out by hand and sometimes from a store shelf, joined the mix, absorbing the richness left behind by bacon drippings saved from breakfast. Black pepper finished the dish, and if there was extra, a scrap of sausage or bacon added a touch of luxury. Haluski wasn't just food, it was a lesson in making do. in turning simple ingredients into something that lasted. Slovak recipe cards passed down through generations kept this tradition alive, each one a quiet record of resilience. Even as modern versions swap bacon fat for oil, the spirit of preservation and community remains at the heart of every bowl. Spam and eggs, or its fried rice counterpart, emerged from a world shaped by scarcity and adaptation. Introduced in 1937, Spam quickly became a staple during World War II, when over 100 million pounds were shipped to soldiers and civilians who needed a reliable source of protein. Its long shelf life and portability made it indispensable, especially across the Pacific Islands, where fresh meat was rare. The transformation happens in the pan. Thick slices of Spam sizzle until the edges turn golden and crisp, releasing a savory aroma that signals a meal built on resourcefulness. In Hawaii, diced Spam joins leftover rice, eggs, and soy sauce, turning basic ingredients into a dish that's both comforting and filling. The browning process is key. Caramelized edges deepen the flavor, while the meat absorbs the flavors of garlic and onion. Spam fried rice became a fixture in island kitchens, blending American wartime rations with local rice traditions. The dish stands as a testament to pantry ingenuity, showing how a canned meat designed for emergencies could become a beloved part of everyday cuisine. Spam and eggs prove that necessity can inspire meals remembered for their comfort as much as their practicality. Creamed peas on toast offered a practical answer to Lent's meatless challenge, especially in working-class homes. Church bulletins in the 1960s and 70s often featured this dish, a 15-ounce can of sweet peas, undrained, simmered in a milk and flour slurry. 2 cups of milk to 2 tablespoons of flour, rather than a roux. Butter melted in a saucepan, the slurry whisked in, and the mixture thickened gently, forming a mild, glossy sauce that coated every pea. Salt and pepper added just enough bite. Served over slices of day-old bread, toasted or plain, the meal was simple but filling. The aroma was soft and milky, a quiet comfort on a Friday night. Creamed peas on toast stands as a testament to thrift and tradition, stretching humble ingredients into something sustaining and quietly dignified. From the salty economy of chipped beef on toast to the quiet comfort of creamed peas on toast, these 20 forgotten poor man dinners chart a journey across decades of hardship, ingenuity, and unyielding spirit. What stands out across every entry isn't just how these meals stretched precious ingredients, but how they transformed scarcity into sustenance and family into community. The most surprising dishes, like fried bologna sandwiches crackling in factory town kitchens or haluski frying in coal country, proved that flavor and pride thrived even when money was tight. Repeated themes of stretching, preserving, and sharing echo through every recipe, revealing a tradition where waste was unthinkable and dignity was found in the skillful use of humble ingredients. This list reminds us that these dinners were more than survival. They were cultural heritage, resourceful manuals, and acts of love passed from generation to generation. Ultimately, good food has never required wealth, only wisdom, resilience, and the creativity to make something wonderful from almost nothing.